What's poppin' T Squad? It's me, Keisha, and I'm here with Vlogmas Day 9. So I'm reviewing the Real World Homecoming Los Angeles on Paramount Plus. If you have not checked out the show, it is a must watch. This is the reunion for the LA cast of season 2 of the Real World, which consists of Beth S, Beth A, Glenn, John, Irene, Tammy, Dominic, who didn't return, and there was another guy that didn't return. But this was the season that really put, for me, Real World on the map. I remember being a little girl watching the Real World and was like, oh my God, I want to be on this show so bad. I wanted to try out. But of course, I was a kid. So, I didn't get a chance to do the first 2 episodes, but I will be reviewing the rest of this season for Vlogmas. So on tonight's episode, we see Beth crying to Tammy about caring for her feelings because Tammy revealed to everybody that back in the day and still currently she dealt with body dysmorphia. She was taking laxatives, she wired her mouth shut, she was throwing up and stuff, and she didn't feel like she got the support that she thought she would get from Irene and Beth S, considering they knew her the best at that time, when in current day Beth A and Glenn were the only ones that came to check on her after revealing that bit of information. And I felt like Tammy was doing team too much. You have not seen or spoken to these people in 30 years. Why do you expect anything from these people? Anything. Like, it probably would have bothered me a little bit, but I wouldn't expect anything from anybody that I have literally not spoken to in 30 years. Like, I felt like Tammy came there with that information thinking that everybody was going to rally around her, like, oh my God, Tammy, like, now we really get it, why you reacted that way. And I do get it. Um, but I felt like, as far as the situation with David goes, I felt like everybody was in the wrong. I felt like Beth S should have been sent home as well during that time, because she was the one that kicked everything off by going in Dominic's room and exposing his genitalia. I felt like everybody played a part in everything that happened that night, and that David was done wrong, even though, David was an asshole. David had his issues, but in that instance, I felt like it was a joke that went too far and people just allowed it to escalate. But I felt like multiple people played a part in that. But I didn't like the way Tammy handled the whole situation when she told them that she had body dysmorphia. So Tammy was like, to Beth, I'm used to people not giving a fuck, and she's just being really dismissive and unwilling to accept Beth S's apology, and keeps on saying we good, when it's obvious we're not. And Beth was sitting there crying and stuff. And I don't understand why she was crying, really. And I felt like one apology was enough for me. As soon as she would have been on some, I I'm used to people not giving a fuck, and this is why I don't fuck with y'all, and this, that, and the third, I would have been like, okay, girl, if that's how you feel, like, all right, who, like, nobody's gonna kiss your ass, Tammy. And I love Tammy, but I felt like she was doing the most. So, Beth S goes outside crying, and Irene goes to check on her, and Beth says she doesn't. Tammy doesn't trust us, and Irene was like, "Well, let her not trust us." And I'm like, Irene, me and you are here. Like, Irene is like, girl, I'm not gonna let it hurt my feelings. Like, we are grown women. And I'm like, exactly. And like, Beth's sitting up here crying like she done stole her dog or something. Like, who the hell is Tammy? Who the hell is she? So Irene, in her confession, was like, Beth S needs to be accepted by everybody. Why is it this one person she needs to have acceptance from? And I wanted to know that too. And the only thing that I could come up with is, remember back in the 93, Beth S thought that she was gonna have the career in entertainment. She wanted to be, I think she wanted to be, Lord, not a journalist, an interviewer or whatever for like television shows, and that didn't pop off for her. And Tammy has had an amazing career in television. I think she honestly wants to be Tammy's friend, because of what Tammy has going on in her life. And I do think a bit of Beth does look up to Tammy in some type of way. So Beth A couldn't sleep because of the lights being on in the house, child, and these last extensions that she got. I don't know what she extended because I couldn't see nothing, but I wouldn't have been able to sleep in that house neither with all them lights on. Like, that would have pissed me the fuck off. Like, no ma'am. But I will say about Beth A back in 93, I just remember loving her pixie cut. She was just so pretty to me back in the day. Now, not so much. Her and Glenn, time didn't really do well to Glenn, Beth A, or John. But white people age like spoiled milk, so it just is what it is. But back in the day, Beth A was so pretty to me. So Beth S is determined to keep trying with Tammy, and I don't understand why. She don't. Tammy, however, don't want to talk about the shit no more. It's a new day, new dawn. She's over it, according to her. So Glenn and Beth A now understand why they gravitated to each other so much back in 93, because now they fully understand all of the dysfunction that was going on in the house before they got there, and all the drama, and why nobody liked each other, and why they really connected and clung to each other at the time. So everybody's sitting down talking. They peeped the magic 8 ball that played a big role back in the day, and they play with it. And Irene asks, she was like, "What have you been up to, David?" And then he tells the story about the accident that he had. He said that he was riding his bike in the bike lane, and a truck slammed into him and hit him. He went unconscious. He woke up in the ICU. They had to drill in his skull. He has a big scar going down the back of his head. It was a very traumatic event that happened in his life, and it seemed like it didn't happen that long ago. It was very unfortunate. I really felt bad for him, considering everything else that has happened in his life. His comedy career pretty much tanked after appearing on the show and everything. And you can tell, like, David has been really on hard times just with his appearance, outwardly appearance, and his teeth aren't looking too great. You could just tell, like, when I look at David, it looks like he stinks. And I'm not even saying that to be funny, but it looked like he has a stench to him. And it's honestly sad to see. I feel real bad for him. It's a sad thing to see. So he says that he's living off his savings and is about to get back on the road, doing comedy and stuff like that. So we learned that John is a youth pastor after failing at becoming a country music star. For a minute, he had something going, but it really didn't go anywhere. He doesn't drink, and he is still a virgin at the age of 57. I think that's how old he said he was. Is he 57 or 47? 57, I think. And I respect that. That's that man's journey. He is living a purposeful life. So I applaud, John for that. He does not want to get married. He feel like he's too stuck in his ways. So it just is what it is. That's how he likes to live his life. That's on him. So Tammy asks if he's still a virgin, and he was like, yeah. And she admits that back in the day she didn't understand it, but now that her oldest daughter, who is 27, wants to be a virgin and wants to wait into marriage. And I was like, Lyric is the oldest one, right? And then Jazz is the youngest one. So I'm guessing that she's talking about Lyric. John goes on to say to them that, I don't see myself getting married. And Tammy was like, you gonna leave the world and never get no coochie? And I'm like, why is you sitting up here talking to this man like that, knowing that he's a pastor, knowing that he is green, knowing that this is not how he communicates and holds conversations? Like with me and Sheridan's a pastor, but she makes it known that you're allowed to, curse or whatever in front of her. She just doesn't use that type of language. So John in his confession was like, it's tacky to talk about your sex life on television. So John, then after they have this conversation, you see John and Beth F going down the steps, and he was like, when I pivot away from it, don't keep talking about it. Like, just drop it. Like, he was very annoyed that Beth S even contributed to the conversation with Tammy. He felt like, you know my life. We've kept in touch throughout the years. Like, why even add on to it? It was making me uncomfortable. And from that instance, I could understand where he was coming from. Like, we cool. Like, me and you have a relationship outside this house. I wasn't comfortable with that situation. So why add fire to the flame? So John in his confession was like, and then she wondered why people call her a drama queen. I was like, ooh. So Irene is like, where's John? And Tammy was like, probably somewhere mad at me. So John then joins them. And Tammy was like, upstairs I made a comment. It may have appeared to be insensitive to you, and that wasn't the intention. I apologize if that made you feel anyway. I hate when people say if that made you feel anyway. It made them feel anyway, some type of way. So just say you are sorry. That's not an apology. The first part of it was a-okay, but that ending part, no. So, he goes on to just tell them, I'm a youth pastor and this is the way I live my life. So they all come to a conclusion with that. So that night they have dinner. Everything is catered for them. Looked beautiful, made me hungry. Beth A has been sober since she was 16, so she doesn't really want to be around them while they drinking and stuff. So she heads to bed. So Tammy asks Beth S and John what they were talking about on the steps. And I'm like, why do you care, Tammy? Why? So Beth S lies and says they were talking about a prank that they was going to throw. And Tammy was like, John, is that true? And he was like, no, it's not true. We too old for that. I told her when I changed the subject, change the subject with me. So Tammy was like, oh, so you was like, that's what pivot meant. Also, when you pivot, she got to pivot. She was like, that's that shit I don't like. I thought we were here to have conversations. He's censoring people's thoughts. And it comes with a double-edged sword because I understood what Tammy was saying, because like we all supposed to be here to be transparent and talk about our lives and stuff like that. So when you're telling her to drop conversations and not speak up, you're censoring and her thoughts and her opinions, and that's not fair. When we all talking about our own shit, it's not fair that you want to not talk about yours. But then I also understood where John was coming from, like, you my friend, don't do that to me. You know what I'm saying? So Beth S was like, John and I needed to have a separate discussion that didn't have anything to do with you. And Tammy was like, when we're all together, do that shit in front of us. Why does it have to be sidebar conversations? That's where it feels shady. I didn't necessarily agree with that part. Like, I don't feel like every conversation has to be in front of the group. But I felt like Tammy was doing team too much right there once again. Irene was like, do you feel that, to Beth S? And she was like, and then Tammy was like, see, she pivoted. She had to think before she speak. And Irene agreed. She was like, yeah, she did do that. Tammy was like, we gonna be real or we not? And John was like, I have kids back home that I have to mentor. I really got to ask myself, is this conversation one where a parent gonna say I can mentor my kid? I felt like a fish out of water the first time. I felt like that again. And I can understand having that heat and that pressure on you, being the one that's considered different. You know what I'm saying? And you don't like having the spotlight and the heat on you, but everybody had to go through the hot seat. That's mild compared to what the conversation was between Tammy and David and Irene and Beth S. So come on, John, you knew what you were signing up for. So David was like, a lot of people don't get a chance to do a do-over. And I must say, I really enjoyed David this episode up until like the last 10 minutes. David was, concise. He was very, sweet, very comforting to people. He was engaging. He was coherent. You know what I'm saying? And I wish he would have stayed in that frame of mind. So John was like, I love you guys. Irene and David hug, which was huge. So everybody else leaves to go to sleep, and it's just John and David. And David tells John that he's happy to be back. He was like, to go from the ICU to this, like, this is a blessing. Like, he's just so happy. I feel like for David, this was his second chance at life. A second chance to get himself back out there, for people to see he's not this monster that he was made out to be in 93. So John was like, I want to ask you something. If I'm overstepping my boundaries, if you don't feel comfortable answering, you don't have to. And he was like, ask. So he was like, has alcohol been a struggle for you in your life? And I was like, whoa, we are going there. I was like, well, at least he did it one-on-one. You know what I'm saying? Not putting somebody in the hot seat. So David then immediately begins to cough uncontrollably. And John was like, you all right? Or whatever. He steady coughing, and eventually he was like, no comment. And I mean, no comment says everything. So John was like, because I want to pray for you. And he was like, if there was anything that you would if I could pray for you for, what would you want it to be? And Dave was like, can I get back to you on that? And he hurried up and left and scurried away like a little mouse. And it was really sad to see, like I said, because you can just tell through the television, like he had some types of issues going on with him. So Irene and Beth S the next day take a walk that morning. They're talking, and Irene says, my husband asks, who do I want to get to know better this time? And I said, Tammy, because she never opened up to us back in the day. And Beth S says, I thought she was beautiful on the outside but ugly on the inside because of some of her ways. And that is a true assessment of Tammy. Tammy is a very beautiful woman, but she does have some ugly ass ways. And the same thing will go for Beth S. She's not the typical beauty, but she got some fucked up ass ways herself. Beth S comes across very Karen Republican like. So David's still coughing, child, the next morning. And in the kitchen, Beth A tells John that there was a time Tammy would have never talked to her, but how she's changed drastically, and you know how she respects her for even coming back into the house with everything that transpired between her and David in the past. And that's really good to see because back in the day, Beth A and Tammy didn't get along at all. So it's good to see them with a fresh, clean slate. So a message pops up on the screen, and you know they got to answer all these little silly questions like who was the most stylish back in, who was the most annoying. One of the question was, if you could live with any one of the roommates for the rest of your life, who would it be? And Tammy says it would be John and Beth S. And this causes Beth S to start crying, child, and weeping. And they were like, girl, what you crying for? And she was like, you know, when we lived together, I really wanted to get to know you then. Like, I really, truly, like, admired you and really want to get to know you. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come back now, to get to know you even more. And Tammy was like, you don't always get on my nerve, girl. I know I ain't the easiest person to live with either. Like, you know, I fucks with you or whatever. And I was like, that really gave Beth S whatever type of closure that she needed, because she needed that, child. She needed that from Tammy, and I don't understand why. So after that, everybody's sitting outside, and Tammy tells Glenn that she's disappointed he didn't have his ponytail. So he was laughing. He was like, you want me to grow it now because he's bald? Like, Glenn looks totally different from Glenn in 1993. Glenn is, you know, overweight. He got a double chin, bald head. He just looks totally different. So he was like, I mean, I can go upstairs and get one of your wigs. And she was like, no, don't you do that, and or whatever. So they laughing about it. And David in his confession was like, with Glenn, I feel a fakeness. Why would you want a wig on? That's weird, you weirdo. I'll snatch that wig off your head. Tammy is the queen, this, that, and the third. And I'm like, what? They clearly are joking. Like, huh? Like, it was just very weird. And it was like obvious that he was caping for Tammy and trying to be her guard dog and trying to, you know, I don't know. I feel like Beth and David know that Tammy is getting to the bag. You know, Tammy is on multiple different television shows. She's starring in one on Apple TV with Octavia Spencer. You know, she's one of reality television's, you know, OG star. And I feel like they like trying to prove themselves to her for whatever reason. So the group then goes bowling, and this time they don't leave David behind, because back in the day, David was like, y'all can go without me playing, and they actually left him, and it was a whole big thing. So at the bowling alley, they start ordering drinks, and David gets a Jack and Coke, and here we go. This is when shit started going downhill. So they come back from bowling, and they film a confessional with the whole entire group. And while they were filming, Beth S like gripped David by his shoulders, you know, giving him a compliment or whatever. She didn't mean any harm by it or nothing like that. But when they were in the kitchen, John was like, did Beth slap your shoulders? And he was like, yeah. He was like, you know, was it the one that you messed up? Because he messed up not only his head but multiple parts of his body. And he was like, no, it was the other one. He was like, it was the one that you injured. He was like, yeah. He was like, did it? So it hurt like a bitch. He was like, no, it didn't. I'm good or whatever. And so we see him close his water bottle, and David walks out of the kitchen. So then we overhear Irene say David filled up his water bottle with gin to Beth S. And so we're seeing that this is a problem. Like, this man has an alcoholic problem. He's in this house drinking straight gin with no chaser, like Jesus the Christ. So everybody is outside. And David makes a statement. He was like, y'all my family, whether you like it or not. And Glenn was like, even me. And he was like, yeah, even you, Baldy. And I was like, here we go. Here we go. This is the same shit that he used to do back in the day, making little digs at people. Like, you don't do that to nobody. It's obvious that the man is bald. That's just like him saying something about your orange ass teeth. Your teeth look like mini pumpkins. Like, sir, no. Just inappropriate, but he's drinking, and like I said, the asshole David that nobody liked back in 93 is resurfacing just after he was doing so good. So Beth A notices the switch in him being a recovering alcoholic herself, and she sees that things are going to go downhill. So they go into the kitchen. Everybody's at the dining room table eating dinner, and they get to talking about the New York cast and how it was a parade of Black Lives Matter and Trans Lives Matter parade go by while they were filming. And Beth S was like, I was thinking, like, how are we gonna top that? And somebody said, well, that's why we got Tammy and her wigs or whatever, and it was a joke or whatever. And Glenn was joking about the wigs too. And then all of a sudden David gets up and throws an apple into Glenn's lap, and was like, don't disrespect the queen, ho. Don't disrespect the queen, ho. And Glenn just gets up from the table because he's pissed, and he just like knows he just does not want to engage, and he's pissed off. And I'm like, this man that threw an apple at this man, like, what the fuck is happening? But nobody else tripped off of it. Like, nobody was tripping off the fact that he just threw a apple in this man's lap. So when after dinner, when everybody goes back on the roof, Glenn tells Beth S and John what happened and how he's not fucking doing it with David, like not. So David then joins them and sits in between Beth S and John and whispers in Beth S ear, can you get me a drink up here, please? And she was like, no, or whatever, I can't do that. And I'm like, nigga, you don't need nothing else to drink, nothing. So Glenn, mind you, when they was down having dinner, he kept on calling David Dave, and David was like, that's not my name, like, stop calling me that. So fucking with him, Glenn says, Dave, and David was like, my name is not Dave. Glenn was like, Dave, do you remember throwing something at me tonight? Like, clearly fucking with him. And so David was like, Dave is a whole other motherfucker. Like, that is not my name. Once again, John in his confession was like, I'm sitting there like, Glenn, hush. David was drunk. Now is not the time. Leave him alone. And I agree. Like, what type of person you're dealing with. He's an angry, temperamental person anyway. This ain't gonna go nowhere but left. If you want to say something to him about throwing an apple to you, wait until he's sober. This is just gonna escalate. Like, come on, Glenn, be the adult one in this situation. You're dealing with a person who is an alcoholic. So David gets up and was like, you're my replacement, right? No matter what, you'll always be behind me. And I was like, oh girl, are we going here? So David leaves, and John was like, we're never going to get through to him right now. It's sad to see someone self-destruct. Glenn was like, is this going to turn into an intervention? And Beth S was like, would you be okay just sitting back and not doing nothing? So Beth A joins them, and Glenn was like, did you see him hit me tonight at the table? She was like, really? Like, it just went over everybody's head. Beth A in her confessional was like, Glenn is frustrated, but he needs to just chill out for a second. I'm like, I agree. Like, you doing too much right now. We understand what he did, but now is not the time. So Beth A was like, he's clearly been waiting to be back in Tammy's good graces. And I mean, anybody with two eyes can see that. John was like, why don't we make sure we don't have alcohol in the house moving forward? And so they agreed to remove alcohol from out of the house. And I was like, Lord, when this man find out ain't no more alcohol in this house, it's supposed to be a problem. So him and Beth S removed all the alcohol from the house, and John in his confessional says, I want to make sure that David is able to redeem himself. And the fact that they even cared enough to try to make sure that this go around, that he stays in the viewers' good graces and is able to get that redemption moment, meant a lot, because it's clear that the pressure of the show, all of these feelings, everything that's going on in his life, it's just too much for him. And he has, these issues. He already had issues back in the day, obviously. This is just a bad look. And I can see now how things are going to go downhill between David and the rest of the house once again. And it's so sad to see him come back 30 years later to have the same results. And this time he can't blame it on anybody else. So it's really sad to see, but I'm tuning in. Let me know what you guys thought about the episode. Make sure to thumbs up this video, like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell button. I love you guys, and I will see you on the next Vlogmas video. Peace.